And good evening, everyone. So this is another little bit of a live stream. I'm doing some development work on Node-RED. Welcome, if this is the first time joining. It's, like I said, about the fourth time I've done this now. And we're just going to spend a bit of time actually working on Node-RED itself, rather than using Node-RED. So if you're interested in learning how to get started contributing to Node-RED, or just interested in seeing how I develop stuff for Node-RED, then this is the place to watch. So do say hi in the chat if you're around. Otherwise, let's get going. So for those following the project, you'll realise we did the first beta of Node-RED 1.1. When was that? Just over a week ago now. So there's been a whole bunch of great feedback, a whole load of fixes and improvements have gone in. There's a couple outstanding items we want to try and address before we refresh the beta, but there's certainly the hope is to try and refresh the beta. Well, the goal was today, just life got in the way, so try and refresh the beta tomorrow. But there's a few more bits and pieces we want to tidy up for that beta. So the one in particular I'm going to spend some of this time, I don't know, unlike the previous weeks, I'm sort of tackling a bit more of an open-ended thing. I don't know if I'll get it all sorted in the hour that I'm going to be streaming, but we'll see what progress we can make. So for those who've not seen 1.1 before, let's pull it up. So one of the sort of visually most immediate new features in 1.1 is the outliner sidebar. It gives you this tree view of all of the contents of your workspace. So if I add in another flow, you can see it shows up, and as I drag things in, nodes appear over in that sidebar. Now, it takes quite a lot of work, and quite a lot of work has gone in to keeping that sidebar view up to date with changes that go in the workspace, because there's loads of different ways that things can be added to the workspace, can get removed, changed. Whenever you rename a node, we've got to make sure the sidebar stays in sync. Yes, various modern web toolkits make it trivial to keep your data model in sync with the view, that type of stuff. Well, the Node-RED editor isn't built on any toolkit as such, so we've had to do some of that work in the core of the editor itself. So I was going to talk a little bit about how we do that, because there's some quite important changes have gone in that, for people interested in contributing to the editor, it's stuff to get a bit more familiar with. But the piece in particular I was going to look at is how config nodes are displayed. So config nodes, for those who aren't that familiar with Node-RED, are nodes that don't actually appear in the workspace. They sort of hang around in the background holding shared configuration for multiple nodes. And traditionally, the one of two ways you get to see them is when you're editing a node, for example, the HTTP request node. You can set up a TLS configuration, and you get this common bit of UI, a select box with a button with a pencil next to it, where you can add a new TLS config node or select an existing one. You click the pencil to edit one or add a new one, and that's the edit dialog for that config node. And traditionally, if you could pull down the menu and go to the configuration nodes sidebar, and this gives you a view organized by the different flows for which config node is on each flow. And the thing with config nodes is that they can also be, you can either scope them to an individual flow, and they can only be used by nodes on that flow, or they can be global, as it says, on all flows. Sorry, I just paused there because I think one of my kids is out of bed, and I was waiting to see if they were going to come and join us, and I'd have to quickly put things on pause once I got them back into bed. But I've just heard the bedroom door close, so I think they've put themselves back. Right. Anyway, something that dawned on me after we shipped the beta was the new outliner, which again gives this tree view, and it's got global configuration nodes, and as well as configuration nodes. Here, if I add another configuration node and scope it to just the flow. So we'll call this one TLS 3 because I've got 1 and 2. And it's this select box down the bottom, which I think you can just see on the stream. It pops down the bottom, but I can pick a different flow. So rather than on all flows, I can select flow 1. And when I hit add, you can see TLS3 has now appeared in this list under flow 1. And if I go back to the config node sidebar, you can now see TLS3 listed under flow 1. So with the realization that we've got a lot of the same, conceptually the same thing here, we've got a tree view which lists all the nodes, then why do we still need a dedicated configuration node sidebar? So in fact, it would be great to get rid of the config node sidebar, especially if that means I don't have to go hunt down this weird issue that when you click on it, it started going blue around the outside. I don't know if you can make that out in the stream. Yeah, something to do with, I think the latest Chrome have updated their how they highlight what's got to focus, and for some reason, whatever change they've made has we aren't resetting that CSS style properly for this one element randomly. Anyway, yeah, so we want to look at, can we get rid of the config node sidebar? But to do that, there's some functionality in the config node sidebar that the outliner doesn't offer. So there are two things. When I hit deploy as it stands, the deploy message says you have some unused configuration nodes. Click here to see them. And clicking that button opens up the config node sidebar if it wasn't already open, but it automatically applies this unused filter. So that then just lists off the config nodes that are unused, because that's convenient if you just want to then find them and delete them because you're not using them anymore. And the reason we know they're unused is you can see the node has this count. In fact, it's got a tooltip, which I forgot I'd added, which is nice. So it tells you how many nodes are using that configuration node. And it also tells you the type. So if I were to add, let's say, an MQTT node and add a MQTT broker node, just give it a default value so it doesn't complain. And we can call it, no, not client ID, sorry. We'll call it broker1. I think you want password. Right, so in the config node sidebar, you can now see it arranges the config nodes. It sorts them basically by the type of their node and then the nodes themselves. And that's because config nodes don't have icons, they don't have color, so you can't, doesn't really have the same ways to distinguish them. Okay, so what we're going to do is look at the okay, so when we compare that with the information you get in the outliner as it currently exists, well, you've got no indication as to what type these config nodes are because they've all got the default icon. You don't know how many, you don't know which are used and which are unused. And also when they're scoped to the flow, they do just get mixed in to the ordering. Now, being able to sort this list is on the to-do list. And that's something that may well happen after the next beta, but in time for the full release. But something that we have added since the beta was this search box now has got a drop down with a bunch of predefined search queries. So you can select configuration nodes, and that applies the isConfig filter. So that's one way to help filter the list more readily. And we have added a filter for unused configuration nodes. So, that, again, that works, but it would be nice to be able to just look at the list and get the information as to how many nodes are using it. If I open up one of these nodes, you can see down in the footer, it tells you how many nodes are using that config node. So there are essentially two bits of information we would like to try and get into this tree. One, how many nodes are using this config node, and two, what is the type of the node. So that's what it currently looks like. I'm just going to hit deploy, so I've got a few things going. What I've already started playing with is, I can't even remember what I called the branch now. There we are, outliner config nodes. So I've already made a start today on improving this. So we're just running the grunt dev build task, which is building the code, spinning it up, running it. So now when I reload, if we now expand, you can see rather than the config nodes just being a flat list, I've essentially added another layer of hierarchy into this tree, which is the type of config node. So that works. And then within the flows, if the flow has any configuration nodes, it now gets a configuration node level in the tree, which again is then sorted by the type of the configuration node and the node itself. Now, that's now getting the tree quite deep, so may yet play around a bit with if that's working or not. But it does feel nicer having the config nodes sort of organized a bit better in this tree. In fact, if I do the filter for config nodes, yeah, you can sort of see that structure all working nicely. So the next thing we want to do is add in a list of how many users are there. So let's have a look at how that is tracked. At which point I realise I haven't got Atom even running. Yeah. Ignore. Okay. So we're how best to talk about this? Right. Essentially, the way that config nodes know how many users they have is that they have a internal property called users, which is an array of either nodes or node IDs. I'll have to double check. We'll see that in a minute. So let's have a look. If we okay, so we want to look at TLS3, which is a node which has one node using it. So we grab its ID, red.nodes.node. Okay, so hopefully you can see this. So I've just gone and got the config node from the internal store, and you can see all of its properties. We don't care about most of them, but here we go. Here's the users object, and in fact it is an array of nodes. So users, it's got one element, and that is the HTTP request node that uses it. Now this isn't a structure that then gets reflected in the exported JSON. This users array is only maintained inside the editor for convenience. So if I just do, let's get rid of that new line because it's going to look at users.length. You can see it says 1. Well, if I open up that HTTP request node and I change which config node it uses, magically the users array is now of length 0 because no one's using it. Okay, so that's good. We know we can access it, the value we want, from the users.length field. So in much a similar way as the config node sidebar sticks the count as part of the label, I think we're going to do a very similar thing where we put a little badge or icon or something over on the right which tells you how many nodes are using it. And then I think may even make that a clickable. So click that will open up the search dialog to give you a list of the nodes that are using it. That would be even cooler than what we have today. So let's go to the outline. Now let's just start with throwing that number onto the screen. So this is the outliner code. I'm going to come back to it, but effectively what it does is the outliner, when it builds itself, sets up a whole bunch of event listeners for all the different events that happen inside the editor. And in fact, part of the creating the outliner work was to make these events standardized and consistent and behave properly, to make sure things happen all in the right order. So we've got events for when things are added, changed, and removed. And on node add, the nodes add event is what happens when a config node is added. So, and we call the on node add function. So this effectively, it creates a wrapper to that node, which is what actually gets put in the tree, and the element, which is, you know, what's the actual UI piece to display for that node, is this utility function in this file called GetNodeLabel. So GetNodeLabel builds up a div with an icon, adds in the label, and then add controls is what adds the enable disable button and the buttons you see on the right hand side. Now what we're going to do here is, if this is a config node, we're going to do something slightly different. So we know it's a config node if we look at its definition, which is held in the _def property. And we know it's a config node if its category property is config. And this is a little gotcha, sort of the exception that trips me up as I'm still getting used to the group feature we've had in 1.1. Groups are config nodes, but we don't want them showing up in this way. They show up in their own right in the tree. So if it's a config node, but it's not a group, then what we want to do is we just want to add this extra little badge, a user count badge. So user count badge, make it a span. It is going to have a class because we'll fix that up in a minute. And we'll set its text to n.users.length. Because we know it's a config node, so it's going to have a users array, and we want the length of the array. And then we're going to do that and append that to we want to append that to the div. Okay, so that's just quick and simple. Add a span with the user count in to the label. Now when we expand out our config nodes, yeah, okay, so you can see it's horribly misaligned, but there is something there. So let's inspect it. Oh, I'm going to have to zoom that down a bit. Yeah, so do we want, where do we want to position it? So this is where we just faff around in DevTools a bit and find somewhere nice. So if we position it absolute, it's disappeared. Where's that disappeared to? Oh no, it is there. Where's it disappeared to? And this is what I just find tedious about sometimes this stuff is almost the pixel pushing aspect of it. Yes, why is that just disappeared from view? Oh no, there it is. Okay, well we don't really want it there, but we're going to just play around with a few style ideas. We're going to make the number a bit smaller. We're going to make it a bit more of a sort of a pill box. Ooh, way too dark. Do I even need a width? Yeah, I should have a width. I'll set min width because most of the time it will be 20, but if it's someone's got lots, then they want give it space to grow. What else are we doing? Yeah, top and right, that's no good at the moment. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it into line a bit. Yeah, that's looking okay. Let's make maybe make the font one smaller, and we'll want to set the color as well to be not quite so dark. We'll probably want to be the secondary text color. I can't think what it is at the moment, but if we set it there, that sort of knocks the edge off it. Yeah. You know what, given we probably want it to be a button as well. There was a whole lot of faffing around for, yeah, let's not use a span. Let's make it a proper button. So let's go look at add controls, because that's what adds other buttons, and nothing if not consistent. Yeah, I'm just going to pinch the trigger action button. Oops. So rather than use the span, we're just going to create a button. Oh man, my brain is not quite in gear. It's been a funny old day. I want to append it to okay, that's all goodness. And then what we don't want is we don't want it to have that class, because that's the class for the action button. And comment out the tooltip for the moment. So this is what a lot of Node-RED UI development is like for me, just tinkering with ideas, trying stuff out. Do say hi in the chat if you want to say hello. Okay, well, it looks a bit more like a button, at least a bit more consistent, but it's fallen back into the wrong place. I wonder, would it make more sense? Probably would make more sense to position it as part of the controls. Okay. Because if we want it to line up with the controls, we may as well stick it in there, and we want it to be one of the very first buttons. And that's all goodness. And now we want to make sure we're adding it to the right thing. Pen 2. Yeah, I can't imagine this is too interesting for you guys just watching me. There's much less sort of theory here. There's going to be an interesting bit of theory in a moment, so do bear with me. There we are. That looks neater, doesn't it? So it's button, and it's got the user count on it. And there's a bit more finessing to be done, but yeah, that looks cool. I'm happy with that for a work in progress. Right, quick sip of tea. Now, here we go. This is where I now demonstrate why what I've just done is flawed. So you can see now we've got the user count 1 against TLS3, because that's the one we're using, and 0 against TLS1 and 2. Good. So let's go into our HTTP request node, which is using TLS3, and let's change it to TLS1. Oop, don't tick that. And I hit done. So this node is now using TLS1, not TLS3, but you'll note the numbers haven't changed. Well, that's because the outliner doesn't know it needs to change those numbers. So what we're going to do, and this is where we are coming dangerously close to what I actually wanted to sort of cover from a theoretical point of view. I've just noticed I've got a whole bunch of console.logs stuck in here from what I was doing all day, so let's just get rid of those. Okay. Right, this. So the reason the outliner doesn't know these numbers have changed is because it all depends what events get fired and whether an event has been triggered that the outliner can use to hang off to know something has changed. So let's just reload and clear out the console without those console.logs. That's good. What we're going to do, so red.events is the event subsystem of the editor. There's a flag you can set, red.events.debug. If we set that to true, now every internal event that happens in the editor will get printed out in the console. Now it can be quite noisy, but it can, if you focus in on what you're trying to do, it is very useful. So as it stands, if we just show our config nodes, when I edit the HTTP request node, and let's just say I just changed this node's name. If you look at the events, so far we've had the editor open event, which is what I've just done. When I hit done, so a series of events got fired. We had the workspace dirty event, which arguably happened a bit, that probably should have happened later, but either way, that event's happened. The editor save event has happened, telling us the edit dialog, the current edit dialog has been closed. Then, crucially, is the node's change event. So this is telling interested parties that, and if we expand its payload, tells you what node, that the HTTP request node has changed. So anything in the editor that might need to refresh its view for that node can now do so. And in fact, if it would have been better not to have that filter on, you can see the outliner has updated the label for that node to say name. Let's do it when you can see both. If I change that to hello, hit done, you can see the label in the outliner changed straight away, which is good. Right. However, if we just filter this back to config nodes, so now when we change which TLS node this one's using, I hit done. Just as before, we've had the nodes change event. The HTTP request node has changed, that's true. But there was no event to say that the TLS nodes have changed. Because arguably they have changed. That some aspect of their properties have changed. So I think the way to fix this is when in the editor we detect you have changed the config node property, we will already be updating that config node's users array. So that's good. So there's already a point in the code where we're doing something about it. What we also need to be doing is firing off an event to tell other people that that value has changed. Well, let's just crack on. We're halfway in and barely done anything. So we're in editor.js in where are we? Packages, no modules, at Node-RED, editor client, source, JS, UI, editor. So this is the code that deals with all the edit dialogues that open up. And there is a show edit config node dialog. Except that's not the one we want, because it's not the config node we're editing. In fact, the other way to find this is, let's go and look at wherever we touch the users array. Ooh, 32 places. Well, we're not going to... Okay, there are 3 places where we push a new config node, push a new entry into that config node. Where are we? Okay, so that's one place. Here's another, that looks possible. And here's a third, that also looks... Lots of duplicated code. Yeah, this file could do some rationalization. Right. Where are we? Let's start at the top and do them in order, because it's going to be pretty much the same code in each time. Here we are in... I think we're in the main... Yeah, show edit dialog. We're in the main editing regular nodes. So we've detected there's a change, and this, we know it's a config node because the definition of the property that's being edited has a type property. If you're familiar with creating Node-RED nodes, hopefully you understand what I mean about the defaults array. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of explaining that from scratch. So it goes and gets the current config node, and then splices itself out of its users array, and then it goes and gets the new config node and pushes itself into the users array. Well, that's really useful because here we have the config node, and we can do it red.events.emit of node changed, and it is config node that has changed. I think that's right. Let me just... Oh, it's not active tense, is it? Node change. Nodes change? There we are. Nodes change. Yeah. So we're going to emit the nodes change event for that config node. And then likewise, once we've pushed ourselves on to the users array of the new config node, hold on, config node, yeah, we just do it again. Simple as that. Haha. But we know that there was some duplicated code, which if I weren't talking to you, I would go on a hunt to try and eradicate all this duplicated code, but the evening's too short for that. So we do the same there, and there was one other place where we did a good, very good. Right. So now, if I go back, in, let's show our config nodes, turn on, turn on debug of the events. Right, edit the node, change its TLS config, hit done. So now you can see we've had a node change event on the TLS config node with its user array of 0. Collapsed the wrong thing. The next one, its user array is 1, another TLS config node, and then we finally get the change by the HTTP request node. Good. So now the outliner sidebar is going to be receiving all those events, but still, it hasn't changed any values because it doesn't know it needs to. So back in the outliner code, we want on node change. So this is if we just go back up, so the event listener we have on the node's change event is the on node change function. Yeah, so in on nodes change, yeah, there's a bunch of work in here. I'm just going to fold it to get rid of it, to do with nodes that can move in the tree. That's good, that's good, that's good. So we want to check, is this a config node? If ndef category is config, I guess I could look if n.users exists, but that's risky. If a normal node comes up with that property, which they could, that'd confuse matters. And n.type, and we don't want to deal with group nodes. Then what we're going to do is, so existing object.element, that's the element already in the outliner tree. We're going to find, we're going to find something, and then we're going to do something. That's the kind of deep insight you're looking for in this live stream. We're going to, I don't know what class it's going to be yet, so I'm just going to leave. Okay, we're down line 460. If we go back up to add controls where we were adding it, here it is. So this is where we added the user count button. And we're going to give it a class, control users. And then we are going back down to wherever we were, line 460 or thereabouts. No, here. So that's the class name of the label, and we update its text to be the new users length of users. So let's have a look. Filter it to config nodes. You can see the TLS3 is 1, the others are 0. Let's go and change it to TLS1. There was a bit of a glitch in the rendering there, but you can see the number has jumped. Why did that jump around? That jumped around. Oh, I know why. I'm not going to... Yeah, okay, that's a hangover from the work I've done to push things down the tree. It thinks things have moved when they haven't. The key point is, aside from the glitch, which I'll fix another time, the number's updating to match. So that's good. Now, it's never just that easy. So if I edit this HTTP request node and select TLS1, hit done. If I then hit Control, so TLS1 now has a user of 1, TLS3 is 0. If now I hit Control Z to undo that edit, which I've now done, if I go back in this node and it still says TLS, it's gone back to TLS3 because I've undone the change. However, nothing has changed over here. Aha. That is because the other way that the users array can be changed is via the history. So essentially, whenever we do an edit action in the editor, an entry gets added to the history log, which is used to do the undo. The history entry contains enough information to undo whatever event happened. So somewhere in here, we have code that looks shockingly familiar, that it has discovered the fact that this node has changed. So this is effectively reverting the change. So we want to do a red.events.emit of nodes change, and we want current config node, but of course there's always 2 to deal with, new config node. And this is nodes change, isn't it? Yeah. Jolly good. There. So we've got TLS3 has 1 user, the others have 0. Edit, so TLS3, let's say it changes to TLS1. So now TLS1 has a user, TLS3 doesn't. And if I hit Control Z, there's a bit of a glitch in the matrix, but TLS3 now has 1 and others have 0. And there's an error in the log. Can't be properly expanded when defined. That's to do with, yeah, again, that's not due to code that you've watched me write here. That's due to code I wrote earlier today. And I'm not going to bore you with me fixing that, but I will fix it. Okay, so now we've got basic user count. I'm going to faff around with a bit more styling on that number. But what's might be interesting is being able to click on that and get back a list of the nodes get back that list of nodes. Yeah, now there's a few different ways that could be done. Some are more tedious than others. I mean, in some ways we know. So this is the event handler for click on that button, and we could just do console.log n.users map, because we don't want let's not do the full node, let's just do their IDs just to prove we can. So now open them up. Now when I click that, you can see I get an empty array. Well, that was a bad example because that was the one with no users. Click that and we get this ID. So I think what would be cool is clicking on that and getting it to pop up in the search dialog. Yeah. So what we're going to do for that, well, we need a new bit of search syntax. I think what we'll do is, so red.search is sort of the core search engine for flows. Oh, this is interesting because it's not quite set up to do the sort of search we want. Effectively, this search function is what gets called when you type some text into one of the search boxes. It pulls out the various is : term flags. So it is invalid, is unused, config subflow. I think what we want to do is we're going to add support for a new syntax, maybe uses and then node ID. Yeah, I think that's plain enough, particularly as it's, the users won't have to type that in. I mean, they can if they want to, but be clicking that button will be able to auto fill in that search term. Oh man, am I going to have to do regular expressions live on the internet? So extract flag, the function you can see just above what I'm typing, is what I'm just copying from. Yeah, so this is going to be flag name XYZ. So in fact, this is almost like the generalized version of the one above. Oh man, I'm sort of definitely getting deeper in the weeds than I wanted to, but we want, it's slightly different to the flag one because it's the flag name is uses, and then we want to match, in fact, any text, but it's a node ID, which is case insensitive hexadecimal string. So, but it could have. Oh, so for now, anything but a space. Yeah, I'm tired. My brain's not thinking, but that should do it. Yeah, that'll do it. We match, if it matches goodness, then what we want is to set flags. Flag name is, we're going to push in whatever value we've just matched, which I think is going to be the first. That's a non-matching group. That's a matching group. That's a non-matching group. Yeah, so I think it's going to be M1 is the thing. Yeah. Let's just get on with it. Val equals extract value. We want users. Or users, or no. I think uses, not users, even though the internal value is called users. I think it's semantically, you want to say, give me stuff that uses this ID. Yeah. Good. And what I'm going to do is just print out the flags array. You'll see why in a sec. So let's just try that. So if I do users 1, 2, 3, 4, you can see now we have the flags property has this users and it's got 1, 2, 3. Ooh. If I look at the most recent one, 1, 2, 3, 4. And if I do another users 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, no, that's... Oh. Okay, I need to fix that. You shouldn't... Hitting enter on that should definitely not reload the page. So what was meant to happen is this was meant to be an array of all the different values, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 2, 3, 4, but I'm only getting the first one for some reason. So we want to match flag name in val. No, okay, yes, this regex is only going to match once. That's okay. What do we do? What do we do? It's that while loop. We can do... Is that right? Do I need another flag to make that work? Because with the regex in JavaScript, you can run it multiple times in a loop and it progressively discovers results. Yay! So, got 2 users, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 2, 3, 4, 5. Good. Okay. So that's in the search syntax, or at least we parse that search syntax. That's goodness. Then here's where we come down and we search everything. So I'll see, this is a bit funky. We want so the config node has a shortcut to get back to the nodes that use it, that users array. What we're trying to do here is we're going to loop over all of the nodes and we want to say, does this node use that config node? And that's a bit of a, there's a bit more work to do that because we have to check all of its properties and check its definition. Oh, it's a bit more involved. Do I have the will to dig into that on this stream? It's gone. Oh, see, I've lost half my screen. Keep in mind, it's very quiet out there. Yes, Twitch is telling me it's quiet. It's too quiet. Don't think there's been a select few people watching. Whether you're really there or not, I don't know. Well, you can see the direction I'm going. As I'm coming close to the hour, I'm going to, and I can see I'm falling into a rabbit hole that we will fall into. Perhaps the useful thing to do is, okay, so the search results don't quite do the right thing at the moment, but if I do red.search.show uses node ID, oh, refresh the wrong window. Okay, now if I find one of those config nodes, now when I click on it, We get an error. Node is not defined. Oh, that's going to be my... No, of course not. It's end ID. So that's going to be my finishing number. Click that. Boom. So at least now I've tied that button to the search dialog to pre-filled with users and the right term. So once I've fixed up search, which I'll do off the stream, that will then be a list of those. And then if you wanted, you can click that arrow there, which copies its result over to this sidebar. And again, that would give a way to browse through those results without having to keep bringing up the search dialog. Okay, so some small progress, adding in that button. So that's another feature of the config node sidebar that we've knocked off. In fact, one item we should, let's just add for the sake of completeness, is this tooltip. So you'll recall, if you are watching, if anyone's watching, hovering over that already has the tooltip. So one node uses this config, 0 nodes use the config. Oh, I love it. You just spend that bit of extra time and you get the pluralization of your messages right. Yeah, makes all the difference. So what we can do is go and find, so this is the tooltip for it, I think. Just check. Yeah. So for those not familiar, so red dot underscore is used to look up text that needs translating. And there's a whole message catalog, and we want editor.nodes use and count node.users.length, except it's not node.users.length, it's n.users.length. So let's try that. Oh. You can hear the neighbour's dog barking. So now when I hover over that, 0 nodes use this config. Awesome. But, when I change it to, now when I hover over it, it still says 0 nodes use this config because we've set it statically here and not dynamically. So we should, if I remember my own code, rather than that being a static thing, we can provide a function that will get called whenever it needs to display that tooltip, which means we can evaluate it live. And if this doesn't work, my next task will be going to allow you to do just that. Yay, 0 nodes use this config. Change it to TLS1, hover, 1 node uses this config. Cool, so we've got the tooltip copied over. We've got it live updating. We've got it clicking on it, brings up a search, which by the time you get to play with this yourself will be working. That's good progress. So we've been going for the hour. I'm going to wrap things up there. As I said, this one was less of a self-contained piece of work that the others are, but we're kind of at that stage trying to get the beta out where this is sort of the stuff we're just trying to churn through to get done. So do keep an eye out for the beta. This live stream, chances are if you're watching it, statistically speaking, you're watching this on YouTube, not on Twitch. So hopefully by the time you've watched this, I will have gone back and edited all the descriptions to try and make it at least sound vaguely interesting what I've covered. Oh, there's activity in the chat. Someone is out there. Motoko1, thank you for watching. Do appreciate it. yeah, we'll have the next beta out hopefully tomorrow. Real life is just getting in the way on a few fronts. Another advert, we've got OpenJS World next week, free to register event about the OpenJS Foundation projects. I'm doing a talk. I've done a talk. I did it last Thursday and then spent all of Friday editing it and putting slides on it, and it will get played out as part of that event, and I will be in the chat to answer any questions. It's about what is a Node-RED node and some interesting high-level design principles that apply when, what do you need to consider when designing Node-RED nodes. So I hope it's an interesting talk. So please do register. It's free to attend, and there's a whole bunch of far more interesting topics around a whole bunch of other interesting Node and JavaScript and ecosystems type stuff. So please do register if you're interested. Otherwise, I'm gonna hang up. I'm gonna go finish my cup of tea, which I've barely touched, and finish getting this all working. So there we go. Great, guys. Thank you very much. Have a good rest of your day, however much of that is left. I'll speak to you soon. Bye.